Okay, in part two of our look at different course models that you can follow as you plan for teaching your online course, this one is going to examine how to do a week by week look, where each week is independent of the previous week, or where each week depends on learning from the previous week. Sort of your call on your course, and it gives you some flexibility to meet the needs that you have as you are putting your course together to reach those learning outcomes that you need your students to reach. So let's look at that in more detail. Just like in the first course that we looked at, first course setup model, we need to have some sort of introductory module that introduces students to the course. And again, this is going to be very similar to what you had with our project by project model. And if you want to see that, check out part one. But you need to introduce your course with some sort of video from you, a proof of life, a humanizing of your course. Give them all the details that they would need to know, include your syllabus. And it's a good idea to copy and paste your syllabus from your Word document directly into the online system, into D2L, because then your syllabus will scale to whatever device your students are using while they navigate your course. They will not just navigate your course in a desktop computer only. They will use tablets, they'll use cell phones, they'll use a variety of different ways. So when you copy and paste your syllabus in, that allows your text to scale appropriately. You can also include the text file of your syllabus as well. I would recommend that you save your syllabus as a PDF, not a Word document. Give them a fun introduction discussion board prompt that they can follow. Again, get to know you. I like to ask questions about things that I want to know about. Sometimes I want to know great places to go on vacation. Sometimes I want to know the best desserts to eat. Sometimes I want to know the coolest drink to have by the pool. It just depends on what it is that you want to know from your students, but it should be very low stakes, non-intimidating, and it should be a question that everybody wouldn't be afraid to answer when they come across it. Put in a little quiz over your syllabus, how those key things that you think your students need to know. Again, very low stakes, and they get to practice doing some of those things that they're going to have to do later on in the school year when they have to take a quiz that's a bit more important. Create a Help Me discussion board. This is a place where students can virtually raise their hands. So in your classroom, when you're teaching a class face-to-face, often you will ask a question and your students will raise their hands to give a response. Or in the middle of a lecture or an activity, a student may have a question and they will raise a hand so that you can recognize them and then ask them to share their question they have. This is that space digitally. The Help Me discussion board gives your students the opportunity to post those questions that are important to the rest of the class. Just work with your students at the beginning and let them know the Help Me discussion board are questions that can benefit the entire class. These are not questions that need to be handled in a private setting or in a confidential email conversation. Things like grades, or I'm going to be late with a particular assignment. Those aren't necessarily good for Help Me, but are necessary and important conversations to have with your students. So try and distinguish which kinds of questions are appropriate for Help Me and which kinds of questions need to roll through email or some other private conversation channel. And then lastly, remind your students that, hey, they need to set reminders on their phone. All the phones that we have these days have a variety of alarm clocks on them, and you can set 2 or 3 different alarms all week long or even per day. The phones today can just do tons and tons and tons of reminders. So remind your students, send them a weekly reminder to let them know you're paying attention in class, and tell them, hey, check material on X and such day. Submit your first response or your first piece of work or your first whatever on X and such day. And then when the students put those into their phones and those timers go off, then the students know that, hey, I need to check into my class, I need to read my material, I need to post some content or whatever it is that they need to do. But when you send that first weekly announcement, it lets them know that, hey, you're paying attention to what's going on. You're in the class, you're participating in the class. Do not create your course and then keep your hands off of it while your students are participating. We would never do that in a face-to-face course. We always want to engage our students whenever we can so that we can be sure they're learning what they need to learn. So do the same thing here. Give those students a reminder, and when you set that reminder out, it lets them know that you're paying attention. And then we're going to move into the week 1 of the course content. So you're going to create some sort of video introduction to the week. This is what's going to happen this week. This is what we're going to do this week. This is what we're going to learn this week. These are our points of emphasis this week. All the things that your students need to know that are key pieces of the learning towards the outcomes that you have for the course. Provide them their textbook reading content, and you can provide those chapters in PDF form if you have a digital service, or you can provide the reading that they need to have. If there's a PowerPoint slides that students need to have, you can upload those into your course. I would even encourage you as you upload documents into D2L to upload a PDF file. That gives students the opportunity to download that file without changing any of the content. If you upload a PowerPoint into D2L and students download a PowerPoint out of D2L, they can alter the content of that slide deck, and ultimately that could lead to some sort of nefarious goings on. So be careful with that. You might provide a guiding question sheet. This is sort of a formative assessment. We use formative assessment all the time in our classrooms when we ask questions and students give us feedback, or we wander around the classroom when students are doing an activity and listen to what the students are doing or ask probing questions when they're working on their activity. Provide a guiding question sheet. This is an opportunity for students to follow along with what's going on in their class, what they're learning. It gives them a very safe way to come in and answer some questions and do some things related to the course content. It's not very high stakes, so it truly gives you a sense of where the students are. Any supporting articles that you need to have, whether they're PDF articles or extra textbook content depending on your publisher or whatever, be sure and include those things. Any links to articles that outside of your textbook items. So the textbooks today are very robust. They have a lot of, the publishers have put together amazing applications that are involved in D2L that you can utilize, but also there's great information on the Internet of Things that you can use as well. So if you need those links, make sure you put them in here, and then just give them an assignment checklist. Hey, these are the things that you need to do this week. This is what you're expected to learn. This is what you're expected to know. This is what you're expected to do. And make sure that all of that stuff aligns with your course outcomes that you have set for this particular course. And again, give them a reminder. Hey, these are the things that are going, these are the things that are happening, these are the things that we're doing, and it's an opportunity for you to humanize the course by letting them know you're paying attention. Week 2, we're going to have a rinse and repeat. And so you're going to have a very similar setup from week 1 to week 2. And you can build your learning in week 2 on top of what you already learned in week 1, or week 2 can be its own unique specific thing, however it best suits the learning that needs to happen in your course. And we want to try and be as consistent as possible in our course design so students know at when things are due, when things need to be viewed, when things need to be turned in, when things need to be posted. And if you can provide consistency through your whole course, that makes it easier on the student to navigate. The activities can vary every week, but if you have an activity on the first week of learning and the students need to use that activity, do that activity, whatever with that activity, and there's a due date of like say Wednesday at midnight, then make sure that the activity is due every week Wednesday at midnight. Provide some of that consistency. If you have a due date of Wednesday for week 1 and a due date of Thursday for week 2 and a due date of Tuesday for week 3, there's no consistency for the students and they could blow right through a deadline. So be consistent with all of your things. I like to always tell my students when I'm teaching online, I let them know that, hey, I need your first bit of activity to be visible to me on Wednesday, whatever that activity is. I need you to have your second bit of activity done on Saturday, and on Sunday, whatever final culminating week-long project, that needs to be submitted at that time. So I give them 3 times that I look for, and I'm consistent every week with that. Every week it's Wednesday, every week it's Friday or Saturday, and every week it's Sunday. So just stay consistent with that, and then you can share with your students all the things you need to do, and you can do that all semester long. Start off again with that intro video. So week 3, beginning of the week intro video. And one of the things that I do with my intro video is I seldom introduce material that way because they're going to get it through other means. But I always review what I saw the previous week. This is what I really liked that I saw. This is where you guys were on fire. These are the places where I think there can be improvement. This student said this thing that I thought was really amazing. We should all give it some consideration. And then when it gets to the content, things like that, that's when I introduce the content. That's a separate video. That's just sort of how my brain works. But again, you know what you need for your course. So introduce your video, whatever the readings are in the chapter from the textbook, whatever your PowerPoint slides need to look like. That guiding question sheet. These are the things that are important that we need to learn and pay attention to. linking PDF articles from peer-reviewed journals or trade journals or whatever journals that you need them to review, links to the Internet of Things that can support your textbook content, what that assignment checklist looks like for this week, and any reminders that you need your students to be aware of. And as you move through your course, these reminders will change because you're going to have a project coming up, or you're going to have a formal exam coming up, or you're going to have a big term paper coming up. So you can put those things in the reminders. And by giving your students an opportunity to check in this way, it lets them know that you're paying attention to what's going on in the course. And it also should minimize the amount of time you have to spend doing a ton of feedback. If you'll check into your course every day, just a little bit every day, students will have submitted things, and you can give good feedback to your students on the things they're submitting, and you don't have to wait and look at 52 things at once and try and provide very rich content and rich feedback to them. It's hard to do when you're looking at 52 different pieces of work at one time, because on those first few you're all into it, but by student number 27 you're getting down to, oh my gosh, how much more do I have to go? So this is sort of how the week by week format looks. And then here's our test week. So we're going to go ahead and introduce week 4, our textbooks readings, everything that's going to look like. We're going to review weeks 1 through 3. We're going to have a synchronous review through Zoom, and we're going to offer an exam. One word on exams in an online space. It's a good idea to give your students some flexibility here. They're taking an online course because they want some flexibility. Tests are very important. They need to be possibly proctored, but also keep in mind that the flexibility piece is also a key thing for students. So I strongly suggest when you give a test that you provide like 24 hours for students to get in and take that exam, and then give them the opportunity to have a 2 or 3 hour window once the exam has been opened. That'll help a little bit. If you have a really high stakes exam, and this is something that they really need to have proctored, those services are available on campus as well, so that the test can be proctored and you can be sure that the student is doing what they need to do. So this is the week by week online course design model. You can combine parts of this with the project-based online design model. It just depends on what the needs are for your course.